Okay. Hi, everybody. Andy Lockwood here, Lockwood College Prep. Pleased to be joining you for this impromptu, unscripted, off the mic, off the cuff webinar on what to do if you were deferred, how to improve your odds of getting in to a college that didn't say no but didn't say yes to you quite yet because they deferred you. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining. Before we get in, let me just go over a few of the ground rules before we get into the rest of the presentation. Number one, say hi in the chat. Not really a rule, it's a request. Say hi in the chat. Let me know that I'm coming in loud and clear. That's first of all, and where you're from. If you have questions, pop them in as soon as they come into your head. I'm going to be running through the few points that I wanted to make first, and then I will be pausing for questions. Okay? So who do we have here? We've got some people showing up so far. Oh, wait, I have one more thing. I want to give you the outline of the notes. So you should be able to see that right there on your screen. There should be a link to it. So let me know you can see that. Say hi. Let me know I'm not just doing this for myself. Jerry says hi. Jerry says I'm coming through loud and clear. Well, that's cool. Let me just log onto my phone so I can see what you are seeing. Can't get enough of seeing myself. Okay, so you should see the webinar outline to be able to download there, right? Okay, so Jerry, anybody else? Say hi. We're certainly at a time of year where there's a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. Things don't always happen the way that we hope that they're going to happen, or quote unquote plan, or think that we deserve that they should happen. So that's just part and parcel of the process, and you just have to ride the wave, right? You got to tough it out, get a little mentally strong, use a little discipline just to delay the gratification or the decision. That's just part of the deal. So, all right. Heidi says hi too. Where are you guys from? Just curious. So if you're just joining us, you can download my outline if you want. I'm just going to zip through it and throw in your questions, because this is sort of it's like a high level overview of my best advice to get into a college that defers you. But you may have some specific questions about your situation, and if you feel like they're going to, pertain not only to you, but maybe some of the other people who are on this presentation or listening to this on replay. I think I'm going to throw this up on YouTube and other shameless self-promotional avenues, social media, my podcast, you name it. So the best questions are the ones that will pertain to people besides you. Jerry, Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Mass. That's where I grew up. Heidi's in Long Island somewhere. All right, very cool. We got a bunch of people here, so don't be shy, especially if you have questions. All right, so let me just get going with my outline right here, which again is available for you to download and take notes. So what does deferred mean? So deferred does not mean you were rejected. It does not mean that you were accepted. Obviously, it is not necessarily bad news. What it means is what it says. We're actually deferring our decision about whether or not to admit you or deny you until all of the applications come in. And each year is different, but generally speaking, we've been on this upward trajectory of a huge amount of applications going in. At some point, I don't think it's going to be this year, but at some point in the near future, the number of applications will reduce. So if you have younger kids, it should be a slightly smaller universe that they're competing with because of just demographic, statistical type of dynamics at work there. There are fewer kids going to college because there are fewer kids. So currently, colleges are inundated with applications. So it doesn't mean that you are deferred. So why do that you're rejected at all? It's not bad news. What are the chances of getting in if you were deferred? I've seen anywhere from like 10% to 50%. I don't think it's, I think in most cases it's in between those two polar opposites. I think you have at least a 10% chance of getting in. It's probably greater than that. So 10% doesn't sound that great, but you might have a 33% chance of getting in. So it's hard to tell because it varies from school to school. All right, there's a few reasons why people get deferred. Number one is, these are not in any particular order, but the first one that I came up with is that they want to see you versus everyone else that's going to continue to apply, because you're a strong candidate. You're in the maybe pile, but they don't want to admit you because someone else that they may want more could come in later in the regular decision round. Now, that's not always about grades and scores, and that's very important. So it's not necessarily a judgment that you're a good student or a bad student if you get admitted, rejected, or deferred. There's also a ton of other stuff that the colleges care about, particularly institutional goals like diversity, which could mean visual diversity, but also ethnic and geographic, you name it. So there are other things that are priorities to colleges that have nothing to do with you or your kid's ability to do well in college. So it's not a judgment on we didn't take you because you're stupid or something like that. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with your qualifications. I will say that. If you get rejected, then it could be about qualifications, and it could be also about those institutional goals, or a combination of the two. So they might want to also wait and see how you do in 12th grade. If you're sort of a borderline candidate, but they saw your transcripts, they see what classes you're taking, they may want to see those marks from first quarter or first semester. So you got to keep those up. That's the spoiler alert. You cannot start your senioritis early if you get deferred. Another factor that could cause deferral is something I alluded to before, which was that the amount of applications, thanks in large part to the rise in popularity of the Common Application, as well as these test optional policies, which are still pretty popular, but starting to wane a little bit in terms of their popularity. Colleges have been slammed with tons of applications, but they don't have the ability or the budget, I should say, to staff up and hire more people to read those applications. So in many cases, colleges defer because they haven't had a chance to get through all of the applications. That's happened in the last 2 or 3 years. Very widespread, prevalent reason why people get deferred. Again, nothing to do with the actual students. Sometimes kids get deferred because the colleges did not believe that they really wanted to go there. They didn't show enough interest. Now, if you applied early decision, I would argue you're showing that you're pretty interested in going, right? That's because you are applying under this binding, which isn't really binding, but that's a topic for another day, a binding agreement. But if you applied early action or something along those lines that's not binding, and you never visited, you never showed up on the online sessions, you didn't follow them on social media, you never reached out to the admissions officer, things like that, then that college may feel like even though you're a good candidate, or maybe even a superior, above the median candidate in terms of GPA and rigor and SAT or ACT, they might defer you because they don't want to reject you, but they don't really want to waste a spot on you either to protect their yield, which is the ratio of admitted students to matriculated students. The more people say yes back to the college, the better. And the more people that say thanks, but no thanks, I'm not coming there, the worse for the college on a number of fronts. So demonstrating interest is a big deal, and that's a clue or a segue to something I'm going to be talking about very quickly, very, very shortly, about what to do if you are deferred. So that could be a reason you didn't show enough interest. Another reason could be that they wanted to reject you, but they have a good relationship with the guidance counselor or with the administration of your school, typically a private high school, or with someone in your family, and they don't want to insult any of those people. So it's like a polite rejection in the form of a deferral. That's not, I'm guessing, most of the people here on this in this session tonight, but that is one of the reasons. So Some of the reasons have to be with you didn't quite stack up, but that's not by any means the only reason at all. All right, so what happens if you were deferred by a college that you applied early decision to? Early decision being the binding form of applying to college. You are no longer bound by that early decision agreement. You are released because the terms of that agreement, where if they let you in early decision, then you're obligated to go unless you decide the financial aid offer is not adequate, which that's what gets you out of early decision. But for our purposes tonight, talking about deferral, you no longer have to feel obligated to go to that college if they let you in the regular round. And in fact, you can think about applying early decision 2 to another college. Sometimes people ask me, well, can I just apply early decision 2 to the same college? And I think you probably could, but if they already either rejected or deferred you, then why would you keep trying? They've already taken a look at everything you got. So I don't think you can do it anyway, but you can apply early decision 2 and augment your chances of getting in to another college at that point. And that could either be done by flipping your already submitted application to another college, or getting that application done now in December. What should you do if you get deferred and you still want to go to that college? How do you improve your chances? So the main thing, of course, is letting them know that you still want to go. So I would send a quick email, and I'm going to talk about the letter of continued interest also. But putting aside the LOCI, letter of continued interest, if you get deferred, I would write an email. It doesn't have to be the same day at all, but I would write an email along the lines of saying, look, I was disappointed, but I'm still very interested. Thanks for considering me. I'm sure you're very busy this time of year. I appreciate you taking the time to review my application, and I'd still love to come if I'm fortunate enough to be admitted in March. I would say something very simple like that. Okay. You should do a couple other things too. One is ask your guidance counselor if they can call up your admissions officer and try to get a little feedback or color on if there's anything about your application that was weak or needs to be shored up, or maybe it was the grades and they're looking to see how you do in the in that first quarter or second quarter. I remember when one of my kids applied to an Ivy League school, she was deferred. She was really angry, and we had the guidance counselor call up, and the guidance counselor told us, I spoke to the admissions officer, and she said that the application was great. So we were like, well, what does that mean? And the guidance counselor said, I think it's going to be good news, but I'm just reading between the lines. They wouldn't tell me anything. So fast forward to March, my daughter one of my kids did get into the Ivy. She ultimately chose not to go, but she didn't do anything wrong in the application. But sometimes you'll get feedback like, we need to see your grades. Keep us updated, right? So another thing you should do if you're deferred is keep your grades up. I mentioned that before, but if they're kind of holding judgment out on whether or not you're strong enough as a candidate, and you then show a drop in your grades, then that's you're sealing your own fate right there. And we've seen that happen too. We've seen kids just kind of lose it first half of senior year. Maybe they took too many hard classes, or they got too bogged down with other extracurriculars or something, and they were pretty sure that they're going to get in early action, early decision to one or two or more colleges, and then they didn't. And then they had nothing to bolster their follow-up argument or follow-up campaign to be let in. So you can't let your grades drop first half of senior year under any circumstances. I would just treat that as a cardinal rule. Okay. So if you're just joining us, there's an outline I'm working off of. It's you can download it right there. There's a download button. It's a quick little outline that I did. And if you have any questions, about stuff that pertains to you, or even if it's off topic, we'll have time to answer this because I have a very short presentation that I'm more than halfway through at this point. Lucky for you, you don't have to see me or hear me drone on. All right, so what about the letter of continued interest, LOCI, LOCI? What is that? You may, I'm guessing you've heard that term, but if you haven't, if you're not initiated, you've got a lot of learning to do. There's so many acronyms in the college process. LOCI, FAFSA, EFC, SAI. Okay, I'll stop. So a letter of continued interest sometimes is explicitly asked for by the college. So you have to monitor your communication. So in that, I think a client of mine just got deferred by BC, Boston College. And they said specifically, if you're still interested in being considered, submit a letter of continued interest. Some schools will say, we've deferred you, do not submit any additional communications to us. We got it. So if that's the case, respect the college. It's actually, forget about respecting the college. Forget about respecting their preferences. Follow their rules, follow their directions. Don't demonstrate that you don't listen. That's not going to be the best first impression or second impression to that college, to the admissions officers. Okay. So assuming that the college is either asking you for a letter of continued interest or that it's silent on it, you should submit one. And that letter of continued interest should express several things, most of which I already mentioned in the email. So you don't have to do both, but you could. Again, thank them for taking the time to review your application. It's a very busy time of year. It must be swamped. Anything you do to sort of show appreciation and gratitude, because most kids won't do that. What most kids will do is also appropriate is, I was crushed or very disappointed, but you're still my top choice school. You've got to say that in good faith, because if you go apply ED2 somewhere else, but you've told your first school that you applied ED2 but then were released because of the deferral, you're going to have egg on your face. And I don't think colleges talk to each other, but I'm a little superstitious about this. So I would still say I'm still very, very interested in coming. You're still my top choice school, currently, as I write this or something like that. You can always change your mind later, but you may want to just think about the phrasing of that. And I would say I want to do whatever I can to be admitted, and I want to update you on some recent developments that occurred since I filed my application. And that's when you get into mentioning any type of and on this outline, by the way, I gave you some bullet points, so some categories to cover in the letter of continued interest. So if you haven't downloaded it and you're going to write one, you should do that, because this will be helpful. I would definitely cover any new awards or accolades or developments or new leadership things that happened, anything like that. In addition, if you don't have all those things, most kids don't, some have none of those, you could say, I continue to take the most challenging courses available to me in school, and keeping my grades up. And I'm also continuing my involvement with whatever else is in your activities section on the Common Application or anything else that's relevant. Okay. So what you're doing is you're giving them new information. You're not regurgitating old stuff. You can certainly tie the new stuff down to the old stuff by saying I'm continuing to do this. I'm still very committed and passionate about the environment, and I'm doing ABC 1, 2, 3, that type of thing. But if you really have nothing to say, then I wouldn't update them with that. I wouldn't call it an update. I don't think anyone has nothing to say, by the way. But if you're stumped and you can't say anything, don't say something just for the sake of it. Otherwise, just talk about how you continue your commitment, etc. All right. What about getting other additional letters of recommendation to support you? Yeah, I would do no more than 1 or 2, maybe 3, but I think that's pushing it. Extra letters from people who perhaps know you in a different context, who can advocate for you, or it could be one teacher and someone else, from a different walk of life, work, religion, internship, something like that. But you don't want to go overboard and submit 25 random letters from people who don't really know you that well. There's a saying, one of my favorite sayings in college admissions, I've heard from a handful of college admissions officers, some of which have worked for me over the years. Thick file, thick applicant. Meaning if you have to pad your file with all sorts of meaningless, let's face it, meaningless recommendation letters, then that's compensating for something. So you don't want to annoy the admissions officer or committee or cause a series of eye rolls. But I think 1 or 2 extra letters on your behalf, saying what a great candidate you'd be, particularly not just academic stuff, but particularly character stuff, diligent, hardworking, committed to the community, charitable, honorable, honest, etc. I think those are good things to put in there, because you'd be a credit to that college community if you showed up. You've got to be thinking that way, and you want your extra letters of recommendation to emphasize that also. The last point, let me check my notes here. Okay, hang in there. Obviously, that was something I just wrote all over. My last point that I prepared on this outline is, doesn't matter if you don't get in to your early decision or your dream college. And this is probably not what you want to hear, but there is no correlation between where you go and how successful you'll be in life. The fact that, I'm talking to kids here, even if I don't have any kids watching this, the fact that you saw yourself as being able to compete at a particularly high level, you threw your hat in the ring, you took the shot, that shows your motivation. And the key to being successful in life, not that I consider myself, a guru on that, is not where you go to college. It's not where your diploma is from, because, to be totally brutally honest, they're abject, complete losers. And I'm not saying it in a judgy way, but complete losers in all senses, financial, whatever, who went to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, etc. And there are really super successful, crazy successful people who barely even went to college or didn't go at all. I was just reading this morning about the latest pick to head NASA. And I'm not getting political here, but the billionaire who was tapped to lead NASA is this guy who did a lot for charity too, but paid for his own flight into space on Elon Musk's SpaceX, whatever that thing was, Starliner or something. And I looked at quickly what his background was. This billionaire who formed this, I can't even remember what the company was, some sort of maybe credit card processing or something else. And he dropped out of high school, right? So is that guy successful because of his parents? Maybe because of other advantages he had. I don't really know anything about his background, but he's not successful because of where he went to college. But chances are, people like you read about people like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, whatever, who dropped out of Harvard. But that's not why they're successful, because they got into Harvard. They're successful because they're the types of people who are very intelligent, very hardworking, and were gunning to get into those types of schools. Whether or not they got in, I think might not necessarily be relevant. I guess Facebook wouldn't exist if it weren't for Harvard, but Microsoft, I'm not so sure. The point is that you'll be successful. Again, I'm talking to kids here. If you are hardworking, diligent, and you have strong people skills, strong emotional intelligence, but you see yourself as belonging in that tier, whatever that tier is for you. And it doesn't have to be Ivy League only. And every kid, I can tell you without any exception, that I work with, who gets into an Ivy League school, which is a handful every year, I either think, and I try to remember to say to them exactly what I'm saying right now, is basically, look, whether or not you get in is based largely on stuff that's out of your control. But whether or not you're going to be successful in life, you've already proven that you are, because of your track record of all that stuff I just mentioned: being hardworking, being diligent, getting along with people, thinking creatively, being motivated, etc. So even though it may be crushing to not get in to your top choice school, there are so many examples of people like I think Warren Buffett didn't get into his top choice grad school. There's all these, if you Google that, famous people who didn't get into their top choice colleges, you'll come up with a list that's going to make you laugh and serve as a good reminder that where you go is not who you'll be. I think that's the name of a book by the New York Times author Frank Bruni, which I recommend also, Bruni, which makes that point that, may be helpful in a sense to be in a college that's elite and has a good reputation like that. But just because you don't go there doesn't mean that the rest of your life is closed off and you're going to be an abject failure. In fact, maybe you have a little chip on your shoulder and you work extra hard. Maybe high school was a little too easy for you and you dogged it a little bit, right? So maybe you go to college with a little more motivation, and then you go, if it's in the cards, that helps you get into a great grad school, because it really matters in education where you finish, not where you start. Where you went to law school, not undergrad, where you went to medical school, not undergrad, etc. So even though I'm a college advisor, I don't really think it matters where kids go to school, at least as much as kids seem to matter. So if it doesn't work out the way you plan for your plan A, I can almost guarantee you that your plan B or C is going to be equal, if not better, to that. So just to wrap up here, and again, you are welcome to hit me up with questions here before we wrap up here. Hello to Carrie in Texas. Yeah, Carrie and Jerry from, I was going to say coast to coast, but that would have been ignorant because Gulf Coast, maybe East Coast, technically. All right, so I'm wrapping up here with a letter of continued interest. Think diet, but that's DIAT. Express your disappointment. That's the D. Inform them that you're still very interested. That's the I. Update them on your accomplishments and accolades. That's the A. And thank them for their time and attention. Show your character. Show that it's not just about you. I'll wrap up here with one personal story here. So Pearl, my wife, was out at a surprise birthday party for one of her 79-year-old golf buddies. I always think it's a little weird to have a surprise party for someone a little older, but let's put that aside. So Pearl and I met in law school. We met at St. John's Law School, which is a good school. It's certainly not an elite one, but solid school. Does a great job producing New York lawyers who are effective. And the way she tells it, she applied to, I think, NYU, which was number 5 in the country after she graduated college, and a couple other top schools, and she didn't get in. And then she started getting nervous. And she was like, I need to do something. So she typed up an application on the old typewriter back in the day, put on her one business suit, and drove in to the admissions office at St. John's and said, I'd like to apply. Is the dean here? And the assistant said, I'm sorry, he's not, but I would be happy to put this on his desk for you. This is impressive that you brought it in person. And the next day, Pearl got a call from the actual dean who thanked her and said, you're in, right? That was pretty cool. 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I had a client whose top school was Cornell. He got deferred, and ultimately he was offered a guaranteed admission in his sophomore year of college, provided that he went somewhere first and had a good minimum GPA. Excuse me. Let me just take a quick sip of water. Okay. Quick sip of water. And but in the meantime, most of the colleges that he applied to didn't let him in, and that included his target schools. And he was starting to get freaked out a little bit. And I was talking to him, and it's never just one thing that keeps someone out of college. But when we were rehashing it, I said, well, did you visit these schools, right? Or which schools did you visit? And he said, oh, I didn't visit any of them. My dad told me that we could go visit after I got in. And I was like, oh, okay. So he was deferred and then waitlisted from most of these schools. I was like, all right. To me, it's pretty clear that they don't think that you really want to go there. You're not showing enough interest. So my recommendation is, while you're waiting to hear back from them, either off the deferral or the wait list, by the way, I'll tell you what the difference is between those two, just to clarify, but you need to go visit some of these schools. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I that's what I would do if you're interested in getting into them. So he went and he visited in the same day, Lehigh and Bucknell. I think he visited them on the same day. And then 2 weeks later, I remember this very clearly because I was driving past that area on Route 80. I was driving out to University of Michigan to pick up my daughter from college. That is a rough drive. It is desolate, by the way. He called me. He's like, you're not going to believe what happened. And I'm like, what? 2 weeks after he made that trip to see both of those schools on the same day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, he got phone calls from each admissions officer at each school telling him that he was off the wait list and he was admitted. So he was psyched and he felt a little vindicated, and he got to shove it in his dad's face because he wanted to make the visits, but his dad didn't. And then he ended up going to Bucknell and with the intent of transferring to Cornell after freshman year. And when I was talking to him midway through his freshman year, about potentially helping him with the transfer application and process, he was like a little wishy-washy. And what turned out was that he got so content and happy where he was at. He was like, screw it. I don't want to just go to Cornell because it's an Ivy League school. I'm doing really well here. I have great friends. I think my professors are great. So he stuck it out there. And that usually happens when kids, quote unquote, settle for a school that's not their first choice or their second choice. So it may be disappointing initially on a number of fronts, but for the most part, if you keep an open mind, you're going to end up loving where you're going. So just to close the loop about deferral versus waitlist. So deferral happens, if it happens at all, in between the early rounds, early action, early decision, and you could get deferred into the regular round. So it happens in between, when you submit your applications in August or September or whatever, and March or April. And then at that point, you're either rejected, admitted, or waitlisted. And there's different subsets. Like you could be admitted to go to some campus in Europe or something, or like I just mentioned, admitted but guaranteed transfer in a year type thing. But there's no more deferring at that point. It's either yes, no, or waitlist. And then that waitlist, you would operate the same way. You would update them. You would indicate how interested you are, of course, how disappointed, but how you're very interested in going there. Do one or two other things. I would never, if you're deferred or waitlisted, I would never camp out, but a little bit of hustle showing up on campus, that might do the trick. Because most kids won't do that. 99% of kids won't do that, the way Pearl did and the way my client did that I just described. So you have to think a little out of the box and demonstrate how much you really want it, and just play the hand that you are dealt. Okay? So that is all I got for you tonight. Any questions? Consider this last call for questions. Hello, Simran. Simran is one of those kids who I was talking about before, who will, even if he didn't go to college, he'll be wildly successful, but he's got some very high and appropriate college aspirations. And I'm cautiously optimistic about them. It's just going to be a few days, right? All right. So that is the last call for questions. I don't see anything coming in here, which is fine. So if you're watching this on replay or listening to this on recording, you should be able to reach out to us using the links that are right below in this post or whatever it is that you're watching. And if you're on social media and you don't want to miss out on any more tips like this, please subscribe and share this, because then you won't ever miss out. Have a great night, afternoon, morning, whatever it is that you're up to. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye-bye.